How's it going, guys? Today's the big day. Will the Fed cut rates? Let's talk about it. Right now, the stock market is moving. It's currently about 10:30 a.m. East Coast time, and we're up across the board. The VIX is down 9%, oil's down 2%, and the metals are slipping as well as stocks. You guys see the watch list right above my head here, right? As stocks are moving big time. So we have to go over the Fed, my thoughts, interest rates, what Trump said about Jerome Powell, the Fed, the whole 9 yards, guys. Jam-packed video, so hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Join my free email stock newsletter, and check out my Patreon for my real-time portfolio updates, which I'm posting every single week. That is down below. And with that being said, cheers, take a sip of your coffee, and let's dive into it. So like I said, it's about 10:30 a.m. East Coast time. We're about three and a half hours away from the Fed meeting, and we currently have every index up pretty nicely. The S&P's up 0.6%, Dow's up the same, actually a bit more than the S&P, as the Russell is up 1%, and QQQ is also up 0.6%. And like I said, the VIX is down now almost 10% on the day. The VIX is back under 20 points as oil is holding above $71 a barrel by a thread, down 2%, and the metals are slipping as well right now. Gold's down not much, 0.1%, but we have silver down 0.75%, which silver, you guys have seen, I'm sure, has been very hot. This thing needs to pull back a bit, this metal. And if it comes back down to, let's say, 33, 34 an ounce, personally, guys, I'm going to actually buy up some SLV. I'm going to be patient on it. SLV is an ETF that tracks the price of silver. So I'm going to be watching it very closely to see if we pull back more on the price of silver so I can buy the dip on SLV. So let's talk about the Fed right now, guys, and what Trump is saying as we're about 3.5 hours away from this meeting. And by the way, guys, we all know the Fed is not going to cut rates today. That's the consensus. The consensus is we're going to stay at 4.5. Where are we at now? 4.5. I'll show you guys that in a second. But before we do that, the headline here says, Trump says stupid pal probably won't cut rates when Fed ends meeting, or when Fed meeting ends on Wednesday. You guys can see if I zoom in a little bit. Trump said in impromptu remarks just outside the White House recently, he said, so we have a stupid person. Frankly, you probably won't cut today. Trump also said Europe had 10 cuts and we have had none. And I guess he's a political guy. I don't know. He said he's a political guy who's not a smart person, but he's costing the country a fortune. It just doesn't make sense, what Trump is saying here. To be honest, I've been an advocate of Jerome Powell. I think he's done a great job. I don't want Powell to cut rates aggressively. We got a rate cut a couple months ago, the emergency cut. You guys remember that? So I don't think he needs to rush to cut rates, especially with tariffs. You know what I mean? He's still waiting to see if inflation gets to 2%. He's waiting to see how the labor market shakes out. So for Trump to say he's a political guy who's not a smart person and he's costing the country a fortune, I'm not a big fan of that. You know what I mean? I don't think that's correct. In fact, Trump is the one that's raising the deficit, right? You know what I mean? The big beautiful bill or whatever it's called. This is adding a ton of money to our deficit in the United States, and this is kind of what pissed off Elon. Elon's like, yo, I'm in Doge. I've been doing all this stuff to bring down the deficit, cut the fat in the economy, or in the government rather, and now you're going to just throw this bill that adds whatever amount to the deficit. It's like Trump's like, gaslighting what's his name, Powell, low key right now a little bit, saying he's costing the country a fortune where literally Trump's bill is adding to the deficit, causing the country or costing the country a fortune that we're going to have to pay for in the coming years here. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of the way Trump handles Powell, to be honest, guys. I think Powell does a great job. And, I'm not one of these guys that, just bows down to Trump and, bows down to everything he does, as I'm sure you guys have noticed throughout these videos, right? I'm critical of Trump, and I feel like that's a problem that his base has, his core following, you know what I mean? They're not critical of Trump. They literally do. They follow and they do whatever he says, whatever his opinions are, they're all for it, and I'm not like that. I'm against, certain things he says and does, as I'm against what a lot of people say and do. There's not one person that I'm like, oh, I agree with everything you do and everything you say. You got to be critical of everybody, and that's what, we're not going to get too political here, but that's what the Trump base, the hardcore Trump followers, that's their problem. You know what I mean? It's like they're not critical of Trump when, there are a lot of things that you can be critical of with President Donald Trump. You know what I mean? And I'm not a hater of Trump by any means. Believe me, guys, I like some of the things he does, but I'm also very critical. You got to be critical. You know what I mean? You got to be critical even if you're, even if you like what somebody does, you got to still be critical on certain things. But either way, today's the day, man. Of course, Trump's been saying Powell needs to cut rates for a while now. He's been on the Powell hate train for a while. And we all know this. This is not news, but we're not going to get cuts. That's the reality. At 2 p.m. today, Eastern Standard Time, we're going to get the Fed funds rate decision, which is projected to be 4.5%, or it's projected to stay at 4.5%. And the real good stuff is going to come at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. When we get the press conference, the Q&A, we get more insight on how Powell is thinking on the economy right now, labor market, inflation, how tariffs are going to affect that now with the rise in geopolitical tensions, how that's going to affect things. We're going to get some more insight later today, which, that's what it's all about. Because, again, the consensus is we're not getting rate cuts, so we're most likely not going to get a surprise cut. So what everybody's waiting for is that press conference, is the Q&A to see how Powell, is viewing things right now. And that's what's going to move the market, man. If we get any sign that rate cuts are coming, you know what I mean, sooner rather than later, especially as inflation has been coming down closer to 2%. If we get any sign of that, if Powell's dovish, you know what I mean, stocks are probably going to fly, and they're already up right now. You guys can see for yourselves. We're up across the board, like we said earlier in this video, and man, momentum's building up. Stocks like JP Morgan, for example, are up 3% on the day. JP Morgan, a bank stock, which, by the way, earnings for JP Morgan are coming up here. Looks like in July, in less than a month, we're getting bank earnings. So it's almost earnings season again. We have a couple weeks here to wait until the banks kick off next earnings season. But JP Morgan's now pushing towards the highs from February. We're at 276 now. Back in February, we hit 281. So this one's heating up quite nicely. What else is moving here, guys? Intel's getting some heat. Not in a bad way. Actually, it's going up. I don't know why I said it like that, like they're in trouble or something. But Intel's up 2.3%. Looks like they're holding pretty steady at 18, 19, 20 bucks. We're actually breaking back over 20 bucks right now. So maybe some momentum will build here, as we've seen a couple of times over the last couple of months. Each time we've gotten down to 18, 19, 20 bucks, it seems like Intel does rally a good bit off that point. So let's see if it does it again, guys. With that being said, I don't want to go too long with this video. That's pretty much it. What do you guys think about Powell, Fed, the rate cuts. When will we get them? What are your thoughts on Trump? The whole 9 yards, guys. Let me know down below. Hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe. Join that free email stock newsletter and check out my Patreon for my portfolio updates. If you're interested, that is. All those links are down below. And with that being said, cheers. I'll catch you in the next video.